You know that place that sells the best pizza? The kind of pizza where you take a bite and the cheese slides right off the slice. Every town has one. Well, at least that's what I used to think until I moved to Indiana. Around here, we don't have one of those. Everything just tastes mediocre. It seems like everyone is just too cheap to buy the good ingredients. And coming from New York City, I know what real pizza tastes like. But since moving here, I can't find any place that compares. Back home in East Harlem, Patsy's Pizzeria was the go-to place in my town where everyone that I knew went for pizza. Forget Domino's, Pizza Hut, Little Caesars. No, Patsy's is where you went to get the good stuff, and everyone knew it. Growing up, me and all of my friends used to try to guess what secret family ingredient they must use for the pizza to taste so delicious. We figured it had to be something in the sauce. Now I'm getting ready to start community college in a few weeks, and my parents told me I have to get a part-time job to pay for some of my expenses. So I asked my Uncle Mauricio for help finding a job. He knows a lot of people here in this town, so I figure he could help me out. Technically, he's not really my uncle, but I've known him my entire life, and he's always been a part of the family. He says that he'll see what he can do, and then I get a phone call from him the very next day, and he tells me he's already found a job for me. He's friends with the Colombo family. They own a pizzeria here in town, and they're looking for a delivery driver. They need someone who can start immediately. It doesn't pay the best, but I get to keep whatever tips I make, so I decide to take it. I stop by the pizzeria later that afternoon to fill out the necessary paperwork, and then they give me my uniform and tell me I can start right away. I'm the only one working here that isn't an actual part of the Colombo family. Stella, Mr. Colombo's niece, works at the register taking orders and collecting money, and she also answers the phones. Emilio is Mr. Colombo's son. He works back in the kitchen preparing the food with his dad. And then there's Marco, Stella's brother and Mr. Colombo's nephew. He does pretty much whatever else needs to be done around the place, like cleaning up and taking out the trash. While we're waiting for some orders to come in, Stella shows me how to take orders at the register, just in case I ever have to help out when she's not there. Things pick up around lunchtime, and that's when Stella asks me to go to the back and grab some pizza boxes. So I head back there, searching for them, but I can't find them anywhere. The shelves in the back are loaded with ingredients and other supplies, but no pizza boxes. Then I spot a door. It's closed and partially blocked by a pile of plastic food buckets. There's a sign posted on it that says employees only, so I assume maybe they have more supplies back there. I walk over and proceed to move the buckets aside one by one. Then I turn the knob to open the door, but it's locked. Emilio catches me off guard. Hey, what are you doing? Didn't my dad tell you that no one is allowed in there? He's the only one who has a key to that room. Well, what's in there? And why does the sign say employees only if all of the employees aren't even allowed to go in there? I questioned curiously. Dad says that's where he stores the secret ingredient for the pizza sauce. I mean, I don't believe that's what's in there, but that's just what he tells everyone. So what do you think is in there? I ask. Just as he's about to answer, Mr. Colombo appears and his loud booming voice floods my ears. I'm still waiting on those pizza boxes. Emilio strolls around the corner back over to where the shelves are and has to stand on a stepladder to reach the pizza boxes. He pulls a pile of flattened boxes from the top shelf. I don't know how I missed them. Mr. Colombo gives me a strange look before taking the boxes from Emilio, and then he disappears back into the kitchen. I head back up front to the register with Stella. Did you find the boxes? She asks with a smile. Yeah, Emilio showed me where they were, I answer. Hey, do you know what's in that locked closet in the back? She shakes her head nonchalantly. My uncle says that's where he stores the secret ingredient for the pizza sauce. I don't know if it's true or not. But what I do know is that my uncle is very serious about no one going in there. Marco thought it'd be a good idea to play a prank for April Fools on him. He stole the keys from his office. I don't think he was really planning on going in there, but as soon as my uncle realized his keys were missing, he went ballistic. He fired Marco. My dad finally talked my uncle into hiring him back about a month ago. That's all she gets a chance to say before the phone rings. Hello, Colombo's Pizzeria, how may I help you? She begins to type an order into the computer. Emilio removes a pie and some chicken wings from the oven, then places them into a box and container and tells me I'm up. He gives me the address and I type it into my GPS, then I head out. The tantalizing aroma of the all-meat pizza and barbecue wings fill my tiny Mazda. I've tried their pizza before. It's been a while. I think it was when I first moved here a few years ago. But I remember it tasting just as average as all the rest around here, so I never had it again. Maybe I'll give it another try, I think to myself. When I reach the destination, I retrieve the insulated pizza delivery bag from the passenger seat and head up the walkway. I ring the doorbell and someone answers right away. I repeat the order back to them just like Stella told me to do. A large all-meat pie and an order of 10 barbecue wings? The man nods his head and holds out his hands to take the order from me. I hand it to him and tell him how much he owes. That'll be $23.18, sir. Then he reaches into his back pocket and takes out his wallet. He hands me $24. Keep the change. Thanks, jerk, I think to myself as I thank him and tell him to have a good night. Then I turn and start heading back to my car. When I'm nearly there, I hear a woman's voice calling from the doorway. Excuse me, can you come back here, please? I turn around and see her waving something in the air. So I head back up the walkway. Is there something wrong with your order, miss? No, I just wanted to give you this, she says, handing me a $5 bill. Sorry my husband didn't tip you. We order from you guys once a week, and he's been in a pissy mood ever since that other Colombo took over a few months ago. I don't know if he changed something, but the pizza hasn't tasted the same since. I happen to think it tastes better, but my husband doesn't like change. He prefers the old recipe. But that isn't your fault, she says with a smile. I thank her and then drive back to the shop. When I return, Stella asks what took so long. They were complaining about the pizza. Something about when your uncle took over it hasn't tasted the same? Yeah, we've been getting a bunch of complaints like that lately. But people are actually saying that it tastes better now. Yeah, that's what the woman said, but the man seemed to disagree. Who was in charge here before your uncle, I asked. My grandfather. But he got sick. He had cancer. My dad took over for him while he was in the hospital, but he has his own business to run. He's a plumber. So when my grandfather passed away, the family decided that it would be best if my uncle Francesco took over. He agreed to do it, and he's been running the place ever since. Well, did he change the recipe or something, I ask. I don't know, maybe, but who cares if it tastes better now, she answers. A week goes by and I get more of the same compliments about the pizza almost every time I make a delivery. So I finally decide to try a slice of pizza for lunch one afternoon to see what all of the fuss is about. And although I haven't eaten the pizza from here in a while, I'm certain that the last time I did, it definitely didn't taste like this. Now I know what everyone is talking about. It tastes delicious. It's one of the best tasting slices of pizza that I've ever had, and that's saying a lot because I've tried so many. Right then and there, I decide that I just have to know what Mr. Colombo has been doing differently to the sauce. What could he possibly have put in it? What could make it so good that it tastes even better than the pizza back home in New York? Later that night, I get the perfect opportunity to find out. I get sent out on a last-minute delivery, and by the time I make it back, Stella and Marco are gone for the night. Emilio had off today, so the only car in the parking lot belongs to Mr. Colombo. I enter the pizzeria and head to Mr. Colombo's office in the back to give him the money for my last delivery, but he's not in his office. I figure maybe he went to the bathroom, so I take a seat in the chair across from his desk and wait. When 10 minutes go by and he still hasn't shown up, I take it upon myself to go look for him. On my way out the door, I notice that his set of keys that are always hanging from a nail next to the door are gone. So he must either be locking up for the night, which I think I would have heard him, or he's in the secret room. I creep out of his office into the back of the pizzeria. The closer I get to the back, I hear a chopping sound, like a knife hitting a cutting board over and over. I follow the sound and it leads me to the door that he usually keeps shut and locked. It's open a crack, so I tiptoe over to it and peek inside. Mr. Colombo's back is turned toward me, and I see the motion of his hand moving forward and backward. It looks like he's cutting something on a metal table in front of him. Then he tosses a piece of whatever it is that he's cutting into a bucket on the floor next to him. I squeeze my way through the crack in the door and inch closer. As soon as I step into the room, I can smell a metallic odor. It's extremely overpowering, and it's making me want to gag. I hold back the urge for as long as I can, and then it just comes out. I begin to cough and choke, and Mr. Colombo turns around with the angriest look on his face. What in the hell are you doing in here? He's holding a hatchet in his hand and he's wearing an apron covered with a bright red substance. I pull the money from my pocket and hold it out toward him. I was looking for you so that I could give you this, I stutter. He snatches it from me, places the hatchet down on the table so that he can count it, and then watches me closely as my eyes shift from him to the table and then back again. My eyes grow big and wide when I realize what it actually is that he was cutting into pieces. Lying there on the table behind him is a smorgasbord of human body parts. He picks the hatchet back up. The bright red substance that is covering his apron I now can only assume is blood. It is oozing down the blade of the hatchet in thick droplets and dripping onto the linoleum. He slowly begins to approach me, nearly slipping in a puddle. I back up toward the door. I thought I wanted to know what the secret ingredient was, but now that I do know, I wish I didn't. My stomach begins to churn when I think about the slice of pizza that I had for lunch earlier today. Then a feeling of guilt washes over me when I remember how much I actually enjoyed it. My stomach begins to violently contract, forcing everything up and out of me. Chunks of partially digested meat spew out of my mouth and land halfway across the room. I lurch forward and sink to my knees, the pungent stench invading my nostrils, and I heave even though there is nothing left. Mr. Colombo gives me a disgusted look, then raises the hatchet into the air. I don't know what to do. My mind is telling me to run, but my body is saying something different. I'm frozen there in fear. The last thing I remember is hearing the sound of the hatchet swinging through the air. When I wake up, a strange feeling washes over me. I feel extremely tired. I can barely keep my eyes open, and a tingling sensation engulfs my entire body. When I do finally manage to force my eyes open, they settle on Mr. Colombo, who is standing above me, grinning at me with a menacing smirk. I try to sit up, but for some reason I can't move. When I find enough strength to at least lift my head, I see that I'm lying on the metal table and both of my legs are gone. Mr. Colombo is holding the hatchet in one hand and one of my legs in the other. He places it down onto the table and begins to chop away at it, cutting it into smaller pieces, and then he tosses each piece one by one into the bucket at his side. My head falls back down onto the table as I let out a blood-curdling scream. The sign on the bucket says special sauce. Don't forget to subscribe for new stories weekly. See you next time on
Nino's Nightmares.
Really? You're supposed to click the like button, not me. Ugh.